So we're going to just dive right in. We're going to dive right into the sources. Let's go straight to the Torah. This is source number 1, Vayikra 19:32. Mipnei Seva Takum, stand before those who are gray. V'hadarta Pnei Zakein, and honor the face of the elderly. V'yaresa me'elokecha ani Hashem, and you shall have fear of your God. I am Hashem. So for starters, we have two parts of this verse which seem to indicate discussing respecting those who are elderly, standing up before those who are gray, giving honor to the elderly, and then it seems like the Torah switches gears and just out of nowhere just sort of sticks into this pasuk, and you should fear your God, I am Hashem. What's the connection there? We're going to get back to that. And make a quick blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nihiyeh bidvaro. Amen. Okay, so who does this apply to? When does it apply? Right? We always want to discuss the who, what, when, or why. So here we go. Source number 2. Rashi. You always want to go to Rashi first. Rashi, the primary commentator on the Torah. Source number 2. Mipnei seva takum. Stand before those who are gray. Yachol zakein ashmai. You might think this refers to an ignorant old man or an unlearned old man. Tamalomar zakein. Therefore the Torah says zakein, one who is elderly. Ein zakein ela shekana chachma. The word zakein, elderly, refers to one who has acquired wisdom, one who has spent their life in the pursuit of wisdom. As a matter of fact, the word zakein, which is the word for elderly in Hebrew, is a contraction of the word zekana. This person acquired wisdom. So, according to Rashi, the indication is that we are only required to stand before an elderly person who acquired wisdom, who spent their life pursuing wisdom, incorporating wisdom into their life. However, if a person misspent their life and used it in the pursuit of foolishness, we are not required to stand for him, according to Rashi. Continues Rashi, V'hadarta Pnei Zakein, and you shall honor the face of the elderly. Ezo Hidor, how do I show this honor? How do I show this respect? Lo Yeshev B'Mekomo, don't sit in his place. V'lo Yedaber B'Mekomo, and don't speak in his turn. Right? When there's a group, a gathering, let the elderly one speak first. V'lo Yistor is Dvarav, and you shall not contradict his words. Now, by the way, these are similar laws to the ones that there's another mitzvah in the Torah that's required of kavod, of honor, and that is kabed es avicha v'esimecha. You shall honor your father and your mother. The Gemara also tells us that the way we honor our father and mother, it has a list of things. We make sure they have what to eat, we make sure they have what to drink, etc., etc. And then it includes not sitting in their place, right? So a father, it's interesting, in my house, right, we have a kitchen table and we have a dining room table. So at the kitchen table, if the kids want to sit in my space, I'm not makbid. I say, okay, fine, no problem, don't worry, you can sit there because, it's a smaller space and, there's less options around. But when it comes to the dining room table, I don't say, no, don't worry about it, you can sit in my place. Because I want them to sort of develop, there should be that sense. There's daddy's space, there's mommy's space, right? It's important for them to have that honor. It's like sometimes today, modern parents will say to their kids, oh, you can just, you can call me Beth. No, you can't call me Beth, right? That's disrespectful. And it's weird. I'll be talking to a friend of mine, and I'll be talking about his dad, and he said, yeah, William and I went up for the weekend. What? William and I? My father and I. So, you're also not allowed to contradict your parents' words. And my children, thank God, amazing, beautiful children, sometimes I'll make a mistake, and my daughter so sensitively will say to me, Daddy, isn't it possible, that the Torah says that you can't do this or whatever? It's amazing. They're so sweet about the way they do it. They don't say, "Hey, Daddy, that's wrong." No, that's forbidden. That's not honorable. You can say sweetly, is it possible that there's an opinion here, or that says like this, or it's a way of asking, sort of where I can save face. So the same thing is required. The same, again, the Torah says, kabed es avicha v'esimecha, which means to give honor, and v'adarta pnei zakein is also a form of honor, and Rashi tells us the same laws apply. Don't contradict an elderly person, right? you can, first off, they say the wrong thing, you can just let it go, right? You don't have to be the one to inform the world of all the greatest wisdoms all the time, even if you know them because you watch a lot of Trivial Pursuit or whatever it is, right? But whatever it is, if there's something important, you can ask it in a way, in a very, very respectful manner. You know, they say, my appointment is today at 12. You don't say, no, it isn't. That's disrespectful. You say, is it possible, I'm looking at my calendar here, and I noticed the appointment for 1:30. Is it possible that's at 1:30? Because I think maybe I made the call in a very respectful manner. It's a world apart between saying, no, it's at 1:30, and saying, is it possible it's at 1:30? Because I think I have it on my calendar. It gives people grace. It gives people honor. Okay. Now, the Ramban, Nachmanides, argues on Rashi. Let's see how. Source number 3, Ramban to Vayikra 1932. The Torah, says the Ramban, the Torah is commanding us to honor all older people, even if they are ignorant and uncultured. And then the Torah repeats itself to include those that acquired wisdom, even if they're young. Now remember, the Torah had 2 phrases. It says, Mipnei Seva Takum, stand up before those who are gray, and Vahadarta Pnei Zakein, and you shall honor the face of the elderly. So Nachmanides is seizing on the fact that the Torah used 2 separate phrases. If the Torah only wanted to tell you, show respect to the learned elderly, the Torah only had to say it once. But the Torah says it twice. It says Nachmanides. When it says stand up for the gray, that means anybody who's gone gray, and even somebody who you know dyes their hair, right? Okay, all right. So anybody who's elderly, even if they're ignorant, even if they're uncultured, even if they didn't learn the right lessons in life and they've spent their life in the pursuit of foolishness. And then the Torah says the next part, the next clause is V'hadarta Pnei Zakein, and you shall honor the face of the Zakein, and that refers to the one who acquired wisdom, as we said before. The word Zakein is Zekana, this one acquired, and says Nachmanides that includes a person who's learned and young. So if you have a rabbi who's very learned and he's only, 25 years old, you stand up for him. The Talmud tells us that Reb Elazar ben Azariah assumed the role as the head of the Jewish people pretty much, the largest seminary, at the age of 18. At the age of 18. The Arizal, who taught us, who sort of almost pretty much sparked the entire new rebirth of interest in Kabbalah, which led to Hasidus, the entire Hasidic movement. I mean, the Arizal in Safat with all his students, I mean, he was a giant. He died before he was 40 years old. So you don't only have to respect those who are elderly and acquired wisdom, but rather Zakein, Zekana, this one acquired. If a person acquired wisdom, regardless of their age, we show them deference. Okay. Listen to a very interesting, another commentary. Source number 4, the Medrash HaNe'elam. It's one of the Midrashim. Okay? Amar Rabbi Bo, hu moser lianika. This verse is an exhortation for young people. Klomar mipnei seva takum. Meaning to say, before you get old, get up. Get up, get out, and do your thing before you get old. Kodem shetaleh l'seva ulezikna. Before you get to gray and to old age, takum lios tov. Get up and establish yourself to be good. V'kasher tishtadel lios tov b'bachurosecha. If you put in all the effort to be good when you're young, then la'achar kain v'adarta pnei zakein, and then you will honor your own old age. Isn't that fascinating? So again, the phrase, the verse, mipnei seva takum, before the elderly get up, and you shall honor the face of the elderly, he says, the Medrash Ne'elam says, in the name of Rabbi Bo, is referring to, it's a commandment to young people to get their act together. Get up before you get old. Establish yourself as a good and righteous person before you get old. And then, v'hadarta pnei zakein, you will be glorifying your face as an elderly person. Okay. Now, what does this tell us about the elderly? According to Rabbi Bo, that this phrase, this statement in the Torah, is actually really on the young people. What does this tell us about the elderly? It tells us that even though the elderly may not be as active as they once were, we have to understand them in terms of what they forged themselves into. They were probably very, depending on the person obviously, very active, engaged in community and helping other people. And even though now they're unable to do that in the same way, they've bought all that respect and all that honor because of what they did when they were younger and they got up and did the right thing. So it's a very important message for us in terms of how we view the elderly. These are people who bought their place, so to speak, in their youth. And even though right now they're not able to do as much as they once did, we have to treat them with all the honor and all the respect due to them because of how they forged themselves when they were younger. Okay, next. Now we're going to go to Babylonian Talmud. Remember, if you remember in the beginning of our class, I asked, the Torah says 3 statements in this verse. Stand up before the gray, honor the face of the elderly, and you shall fear Hashem, I am your God. And the words, you shall fear Hashem, I am your God, just seem out of place. What does that have to do with the beginning of that verse? How did it get sort of stuck in there? So the Gemara explains it. The Babylonian Talmud, tractate Kiddushin 32b. You might think, Yachol Yatzim Einav Kemisha Lo Ro'ehu. This is such an important case for our situation in our world today. We live in a world where there's an aging population. We live in a world where there are so many baby boomers becoming of age now and retiring, and eventually in another 20 years from now, the percentage of the elderly in America compared to the percentage of the young is going to be very different than when we were younger. And there are a lot of responsibilities, a lot of engagement opportunities with the elderly. And some of them may be time-consuming, effort-consuming. So somebody might think, you know what? Yeah, I should get up for the elderly and I should respect them, etc., etc. I'm kind of chilling over here right now. And when the elderly person walks in, I'll just pretend like I didn't see. I don't want to show him disrespect his face. I'll just be very focused on the books over there, right? Just looking into those books. I didn't notice that that elderly gentleman is walking across the street with a big bag, because I know that if I go over to him and ask him can I help him across the street, then he may say to me, can you help me bring it up to my apartment? I got a 3rd-story walk-up. And then he's going to walk so slowly and it's going to take up all my time. So I'm just going to pretend like I never saw that. I'm busy checking up the billboard. It says, to advertise, call 313-279-8888. And I'm thinking about it, and I got to remember that number, right? So I'm going to sit there and stare at that billboard as that elderly gentleman just walks on by. This is a very real situation here in America right now. Because there are a lot of elderly, and there are a lot of needs. And a lot of those needs are not being met. And a lot of times people are being ignored. So the Torah says, you might think you can just close your eyes as if you do not see the person. Talmud Lomar, Takum, V'yaresa. Get up and you shall fear Hashem your God. Davar hamasur lalev nemer bo v'yaresa me'elokecha. Anytime there's a matter that only you know, the verse says, and you shall fear Hashem your God. Because there's something else that knows too. You're not the only one who knows whether or not you saw that elderly person trying to cross the road. with the big bag coming back from the supermarket. God knows too. And if you pretend to look away, you may not look like a bad guy to the person walking by the street who goes to help that person and just thinks you didn't notice because you were busy staring at the sign. But God knows. V'yaresa me'elokecha. We see this also in other areas. For example, the Torah talks about not painting people. Passive aggressive. Oh, I'm just joking. And talks about that also. The Torah says, "V'yaresa me'elokecha." Be afraid of your God because He knows. You're trying to dig into somebody and hurt their feelings, and then when they look at you, you're like, "Oh, we're just kidding. Everyone's sitting around and all your friends," and you throw a barb out there and attack them verbally. And then when they look at you and there's pain in their eyes, they're like, "Oh, I'm just kidding. Why are you being so sensitive? Why are you being so sensitive?" God says, "You know what? I know. I know that you got some anger in your heart towards that person for whatever reason, and that you were digging into them." V'yaresa me'elokecha. So when it comes to the elderly, this is an area, again, it is an area that requires an enormous amount of time, effort, resources, and it's time, effort, and resources that they've earned. But if we're gonna pretend like we look away, God says, "I know." Here's another very interesting exposition. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says this again, still in the Talmud. Minayin lezaken shelo yatriach. How do we know that just like there's an onus on the young to notice and not look away and not ignore and not pretend not to see the elderly, so too the onus is on the elderly not to be overly demanding. Isn't that interesting? Therefore, Talmud Loma, the Torah says, "Zaken v'yaresa." And you shall stand up before the elderly and you shall fear. The words elderly and you shall fear are together in the verse to indicate that the elderly also has to have concern. Not to be overbearing, not to be over-demanding, not to be too taxing. It's a very, very delicate issue. On the one hand, the young are strictly required by God to notice, not to look away, to stand up, to be there, to do what they can. On the other hand, the elderly are also told, don't be over-demanding. Because that sort of, it ruins it for all of society. Right? Meaning when one person is overly demanding, resources that could be distributed to other elderly people, so to speak, are taken away. So the onus goes both ways. This is something fascinating, by the way. Because I wonder, and this is a question I don't know the answer to, but I wonder how much in advance, so to speak, is this requirement? What do I mean by that? Okay, clearly, someone's in their mid-80s and they need help, they should get the help they need. Clearly, if someone's in their mid-80s and they don't really need the help, but why not call somebody up, have them come over, make you dinner, you need a little bit of company, whatever it is. You know, sometimes you can be overly demanding. Sometimes you just need the company, and that's 100% legitimate too. 100% legitimate. My question though, and I don't know the answer to this, does that mean, just like we said before, that the phrase was a mitzvah on the young to get up and do their thing when they're young so that they will honor themselves in their old age? Is this a requirement that when I'm 55 years old and 60 years old, that I take a lot of walks and I do the things that I need to do to get myself in the right, proper shape, that I will not be requiring other people's assistance as much? Understand? This is like it's a real question. I don't know. I mean, yes, definitely the Torah here says, the indication from the Babylonian Talmud is, there's a requirement on the elderly not to be overly demanding. But is that also a requirement on those who are going to be elderly to do the right steps to ensure that 20 years down the line from now, 10 years down the line from now, I won't be overly demanding? Because if I don't take the right steps, then 20 years from now, I'll need all the time and resources, and I won't be demanding more than I need. I'll just be demanding what I need. But had I taken care of myself better when I'm 60 and 55, I would not need it as much. I don't know the answer to that. Because we see the difference, right? Science tells us we see the difference. People are very, very active. You know, again, there's no hard science to this. There's no there's no perfect clause. But definitely people who are more active and get more exercise and stretch and those kind of things, they are going to require less care when they're elderly. So how far in advance is this requirement of not being too demanding? Okay. So we've got Rashi, who says that the requirement is for somebody who acquired wisdom. We got Nachmanides, the Ramban, who says that it's for anybody who's elderly, even if they have not acquired wisdom. Let's see if we can get another source on that. We sort of need a tiebreaker. So when we need a tiebreaker between Rashi and Nachmanides, who do we turn to? Maimonides. Exactly. That's exactly the program. So let's turn to source number 6. Maimonides, Laws of Talmud Torah 6:9. Mi shehu zakein muflag bezikna. One who is old, but here he actually adds in another word. He adds in the words muflag bezikna, which means very elderly, like exceedingly old. The word zakein means old. Muflag bezikna means very old. Afal pi she'eino chacham, even if he is not wise, even if he has not acquired wisdom, omdim lefanav. You have to stand up before him. So who is this like? Is it like Rashi or like Nachmanides? Nachmanides. More like Nachmanides. Because again, Rashi said only for one who acquired wisdom. Nachmanides said even if you didn't acquire wisdom. Maimonides seems to be taking the same position. However, Maimonides added in the word, this refers to someone who's exceedingly old. Meaning that if somebody's necessarily like younger old, then you don't necessarily have to stand up for them if they're not, even if they did not acquire wisdom, it seems to indicate from Maimonides. However, if one is exceedingly old, then you must stand up for him even if he is not learned, even if he is not wise, even if he did not spend his life in the proper acquisition of wisdom and good deed. How old is exceedingly old? 110. You're all good. See? Okay, I'm kidding. I don't know. You have to depend on the person. Okay. Now, next. Va'afilu hachacham shu yeled omei b'fnei hazaken hamuflag bezikna. Even a child who's very learned stands up, is required to stand up before the elderly who's not learned. Okay? He adds in another important detail. When you stand up, okay, especially, thank God, we live in a world today, it's amazing. Baruch Hashem, thank God, the technologies that we have today, the medicine that we have today, people are able to live such beautiful, fruitful, long lives, and it's an amazing thing. Do you know that throughout the Dark Ages, the lifespan of the average human being was 35 years or less in some places? Today, thank God, the lifespan is going up and up, although I think it just took a dip for the first time. It just took, if I'm not mistaken, I remember reading a study somewhere that it just took a dip. So it's been rising and rising as technology and medicine gets better. But I think what they said is the dip is coming from our own lifestyles, right? At a certain point, as much as we can use the medicines, like our own lifestyles start to pull down on that number. But thank God, I mean, today for people to live 80s, 90s is regular. Basically, you ain't getting no respect until you're 100 at least. No, I'm kidding. So, what we're saying over here is thank God, there's a point now where you have a lot of elderly people. If you've got to stand up every single time someone walks in, we're going to spend our life doing jumping jacks. So Maimonides says, "Ve'eino chayav la'amod malo kamoso." You don't need to stand, like if you're sitting down, you don't need to do a full all the way stand up. Rather, ela kedei lahadro, enough to give him honor. So it means if you're sitting down, you kind of go like this. You know, you make a motion where you get up, like a getting up motion without fully taking yourself to full height. Next, says the Rambam, Maimonides, "Vafilu zaken kuti mahadrinoso bedvarim, v'nostim lo yad l'somcho." Even a non-Jewish elderly person must be honored by being spoken to respectfully, and you give him an arm to lead on. Shenemar mipnei seva takum. It says in the Torah, "You shall get up before those who are gray." Kol seva b'mashma. Anybody who's gray is indicated in that verse. It said, "Get up before those who are elderly." Did not say specifically those who are Jewish. Therefore, even for the non-Jew, we get up. We show respectful words to them. We give them a hand to lean on. Okay, so we've got Rashi saying only one who acquired wisdom. We've got Nachmanides, even one who didn't acquire wisdom. We got Maimonides, even one who didn't acquire wisdom and is exceedingly old. So what is the Jewish rule of law? For that, of course, we look to the Shulchan Aruch, the Jewish code of law. This is found in source number 7, Shulchan Aruch Yeridea 244-1. Mitzvah zaseh lakum mipnei kol chacham. It's a mitzvah, a positive commandment, to get up before every wise person, afilu eino zaken, even if he's not old, ela yanik v'chacham, rather he's young and learned, v'afilu eino rabo, and even if he's not your teacher, just a person who's very learned, a person who's very wise, you get up before him, even if he's not your teacher, but he's someone's teacher. Okay. Now, here is an interesting little insert here, added by the Ramah. A little bit of background. The Jewish Code of Law was written simultaneously by two people on two continents. Rav Yosef Karo was writing the Shulchan Aruch, the Jewish Code of Law, in Safat, in the holy city of Safed. At the same time, the Ramah, Rav Moshe Isserles, was writing the Jewish Code of Law in the city of Krakow. As a matter of fact, I had the honor to be in his shul. And not only that, did I have the honor to be in his shul in Krakow, where hopefully, possibly he wrote it. His grave is right outside. I prayed by his grave. In our group that day, we had somebody whose mother's last name was Isserles. And she was a direct descendant from the Ramah. So in our group, at the shul of the Ramah, who remember lived in the 1600s, we had a direct descendant of the Ramah. Now when they realized that they were both writing the same thing, Rav Moshe Isserles, in an act of enormous humility, said, "I don't want there to be two Torahs, so I will take out my whole book and throw it out. Because I don't want there to be you're Sephardic, you have that Jewish code of law. And you're Ashkenazic, you have that Jewish code of law." Because Rav Yosef Karo was Sephardic and the Ramah, Rav Moshe Isserles was Ashkenazic. I'll put it away. On the condition that wherever there's any slight difference, you put in my words in a gloss, in a parentheses. So here, excuse me, the Jewish code of law says you got to stand up before anybody who's wise, even if they're young. Okay? Even if you're not your teacher. The Ramah adds in, Rakshu gadol mimenu v'ro'oi lilmod mimenu. I've got to stand up for anybody who's learned, even if they're young, on the condition that he is someone greater than you and someone that you could learn from. Meaning, if I am 55 years old and I'm, let's say, learning knowledge level 33, okay? I'm a 33 level wizard in the Torah world. You know? And somebody walks in who's a young whippersnapper, and he's 25 years old, but he's still great. He's a level 29 wizard, meaning he's very wise, and he has a lot of students. But I surpass him in my knowledge. Then I do not need to get up for him. So for the average Joe on the street who sees this rabbi who's 25 years old, but he's level 29 in his Torah knowledge, the average person has to get up for that person, even if that person is younger than them. However, if this person is a great scholar, and he's younger than me, and I'm more knowledgeable from him, and I don't have what to learn from him, so to speak, then I do not really need to get up for him. Continues the Jewish code of law. V'chein mitzvah lakum mipnei seva, dahainu ben shivim shana. Now we're finally getting a straight number here. He says it is also a commandment to stand up before the elderly. That is one who is 70 years old. So they give us a number over here. Which means that anybody here who's 70 or above, you are in the honor class. Okay? You made it. You made it. We all honor you, salute you, and are amazed by you. And if you're not there yet, don't worry, you'll get there soon. We're all going to get there soon, God willing. Okay? It's an honor. Judaism, that's the amazing thing. In the secular world, we almost view age as like this negative thing. Like people are embarrassed. In Judaism, we glorify it. Continues the Ramah in the gloss. Afilu hu am haaretz, even if he's an ignoramus. Even if he didn't learn, he didn't spend his life in learning. Now the Jewish code of law is ruling, not like Rashi, but rather like Nachmanides and Maimonides. However, one caveat, ubulvad shelo yeh rasha. As long as he's not an evil person. So if a person is 85 years old and they spent their life battling all that is good and righteous, then we don't stand up for them. Meaning, if a person reaches the age of elderly and they've not acquired wisdom, we still respect them, and we're going to get to a reason for that soon. We're going to discuss why. Okay? However, if the person's been a negative force, somebody who, like writing anti-God screeds or like whatever it is, just a bad person, a mafia don, right? If the mafia don walks into the room, even though he's an old man, we don't get up for him. Okay? Now, I want to tell you a story. And this really shows us a very important aspect of understanding how Judaism views the elderly and how the outside world views the elderly. There was a great sage named Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. And he was once on a plane, and it so happened that he sat down next to a professor, a Jewish guy also. A professor. They got into conversations. This guy was an atheist or whatever it was. And, they got into a little bit of religious discussion. Now, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky had a grandchild who was on this flight, who helped him on, helped him to his seat. They weren't seated together, but throughout the flight, this grandchild just kept coming over to his grandfather again and again and again. Does Zadie need anything? Would Zadie like a water? I have some snacks in my bag. Can I get Zadie something to eat? Perhaps some snack crackers, whatever, some crackers. And every time he would bow sort of to Zadie, talking to him in such a respectful way. Forget not using his first name, but not even using second tense, rather using third tense. Does Zadie want this? With such respect. After a while, this professor says to Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, I don't understand. He says, your grandkids treat you with such respect. I'm lucky if I get my grandkids' attention, and that's if I'm bringing them a present. If I'm not, I can forget about it. What's the deal? Why do your grandchildren have such enormous respect for you? And it's out of control. I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen a grandchild shows such great respect to a grandparent. It's abnormal. So Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky says, let me explain. You just told me your views, your beliefs. You're an atheist. You believe that we all just Big Bang, just no, it wasn't God guided, just it all happened. And we all came here from the ape. Right? So if you go back to the family tree, you go to dad, grandpa, great-granddad, and you go back, another, a few more, and then eventually you start branching off into like Homo erectus, Homo orangutan, gorilla, silverback. He says, in your world, the farther back you go, the closer you get to the ape. The closer you get back to unintelligent life. The closer you get back to some caveman drawing on a wall, some crude drawing of like a buffalo. And every generation you get further ahead, you're getting more enlightened. More wise. You're learning more science. You're inventing new technology. He says, in your world, the young people, they're where it's at. They're heading into a great, bright, beautiful future, filled with knowledge that you couldn't possibly have. Your grandkid looks at you as just an overripe ape. That's a little bit much. Yes, I know. And I don't know if he said that, but I felt I should add that for embellishment purposes. But he said your grandchild looks at you and you're like old school, ignorant. You don't know the ways of the world. You barely can use a cell phone. Yeah, zany. He says, in my world, we believe, A, that God created the world. But more importantly, that God came down on Sinai and gave all of his light and all of his wisdom, not all, it's a fraction, we can never get all of God's wisdom, but he gave of his infinite light and his infinite wisdom to the Jewish people at Sinai. And it was the brightest, most enlightened moment in all of human history. And every generation, as we get further away, we're losing. Because every time we go from generation to generation, a little bit is lost in translation. A little bit of that sanctity. A little bit of that purity. A little bit of that self-sacrifice. We look back at previous generations, the sacrifice they had for Judaism. People who lived through the Crusades and the Inquisitions, and they didn't give up. The strength that they had. The wisdom that they had. We look at our previous generations. We look at the people who wrote the Talmud and the Mishnah. These people were angels. Their knowledge, their wisdom was so great we can't even hope to scratch the surface. We are coming from an enlightened past and it's getting darker and darker. Every generation we lose a little bit of that light. It's called Yeridas Hadoros, the devolution of the generations. So my grandson looks at me. I'm the enlightened one. I'm the link to the enlightened past. Of course he has the greatest respect for me, and he wants to learn from me, and talk to me, and spend time with me, and glean a little bit of that light from me. That's how we view, in the Torah world, the elderly. They are treasures. They come from a greater, more enlightened place. We can only hope that if we spend enough time around them, and talk to them, and engage with them, that we'll be able to get a little bit of that light. Otherwise, we lose out big time. And that's why Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky says, my grandson comes to me Zadie, can I get you this? Can I get you that? He wants to study with me. He wants to talk to me. That's how we see the world. Okay. It's funny, by the way. It's amazing. The brazenness. The brazenness of the youth. And even in the world, in the Jewish world, I've seen rabbis who cannot open up a tractate of Talmud and make it through 2 lines. Rabbis, people who call themselves rabbis, who literally cannot open up, forget the Talmud, the Torah, the Chumash, the 5 books of Moses. Now they can't read the Talmud because there's no vowels, and they only can read with vowels. But open up the Chumash without a translation. And some of these rabbis are lost. And yet they make rulings about fundamental Jewish issues, throwing away all the wisdom of our past rabbis, and saying things like, yes, they were great, but we're great too. They had their opinions, and we have ours. As if there's some kind of knowledge equivalence over here. Just to understand how much we venerate and respect the previous generation's knowledge. One of the greatest sages alive today is a man named Rabbi Kanievsky. He lives in Israel. As a matter of fact, over Shavuos, just now, I was reading a book about his wife. This woman was beyond Wonder Woman. She spent her entire day, all day, just giving people advice and blessings and encouragement and solace. I mean, it's unreal. And even when she was sick, they would try to shut down her flow of visitors sometimes, and she would get more sick from not being able to help people. They one time made her, I just was reading the story. They made her go to Tzfat. She lived in Bnei Brak. They made her go to Tzfat for a vacation because her health was a little bit, was under the weather. She quickly sent out a message to everybody, come see me in Tzfat. It's unreal. I mean, the stories about this woman, that the time she would pray for people for years. They would come to her and beg for a blessing or a prayer, and they would leave. And she would pray for them for years. And one of the stories, it says, like, she would sometimes express to the people who were close to her pain, that people would often come to her when they were in pain and beg for her advice or for a blessing, or that she pray for them, but then they wouldn't come back to her and tell her when they actually had the salvation. There were times where she would pray for somebody for years after they already had been redeemed, so to speak. Someone came to them, couldn't have any children, please pray for us. She would pray for them for 4 years. Turned out they had a kid after a year. They just never came and told her. Imagine the way she carried the burden of the Jewish people on her. And yet she had a smile, the warmest smile for everybody. Always the kindest. It's unreal. You should read this book. It's called Rebbitzin Kanievsky. Anyway, her husband's been studying Torah his entire life. From the time he was 3 years old, her husband's father was also one of the greatest sages of the previous generation. His name was the Stipler Gaon, Rav Yaakov Kanievsky. Rav Chaim Kanievsky, every year, for decades, he would finish the entire Babylonian Talmud, the entire Torah, the entire Tanakh, the entire Jewish code of law, the Shulchan Aruch, he would finish everything every year. He had a very intense, rigorous schedule. And then every time there was a leap year, in the Jewish world, leap year is an extra month, not an extra day. Every time there was a leap year, he would write a book, like a sefer, a brilliant book of all his collected wisdoms, not all, but a fraction of them. He lives in Israel. If you were to go to him and say, Rav Chaim Kanievsky, you are so brilliant, you are so learned, I think that you're as great as the Netziv. The Netziv was Rav Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin. He lived in the 1800s, the late 1800s. And you would say to Rav Chaim Kanievsky, I think that you're as great as the Netziv. You know what would happen? He would start trembling and he would say, Chas v'shalom, God forbid, don't say that. It would be painful for you, for him I mean, to hear you even comparing him to someone who lived 100 years ago. And if you were to go to the Netziv and say, I think you're as great as the Vilna Gaon who lived 150 years and 120 years before him, he would say the same thing. Ask anybody who's filled with knowledge and say, you're so knowledgeable, you know everything, you must be as great as the Rav Yosef Karo. They would say you're out of your mind. And yet you have people here today, the brazenness. People today, I went to rabbinical school for 4 years. And I studied, what did I study? Well, let's see, we studied board etiquette, fundraising, Talmudics, Hebrew, because I didn't really come in knowing Hebrew. What else did I study? Management, facility management, right? I mean, Tanakh, biblical criticisms. Of course, you got to study criticisms of the Bible, right? And so on and so forth. And now I say that, okay, those rabbis were great and they had their opinion, and we have our opinion. What a lack of understanding. What a total, utter lack of understanding of the respect that we have for those with the light from the previous generations. Even the wisest of our generation would shudder if you compared them to the wise of the previous generation. And you have some guy who literally cannot read the Torah without a translation, and he's making rulings on Jewish law saying, they had their opinion, I have mine. Anyway, it's brazenness. I want to show you another source. It's an amazing source. This is in the Babylonian Talmud, and it talks about how a bunch of great rabbis described what they did to merit long life. We're going to read through this kind of quickly. Rabbi Zakkai's students asked him, by what virtue did you merit long life? He answered them, in all my life, I never urinated near a place of prayer, and I never referred. In the olden times, there were no, they didn't have bathrooms in every house like we did. People would often, in the olden times, by the way, I don't know if you noticed, people would urinate and defecate in the streets. There's an etiquette book that we have from the 1400s, and in the etiquette book it says that when you see your friend squatting on the side of the road, don't say anything to him. People would. So when he says this, you have to understand, in the old days they didn't have bathrooms like they have today. So the fact that he never even urinated near a place of prayer was a huge. That means that he respected prayer so much that he would go so far away every time. I never referred to my friend by a nickname. I always called them by their proper name, and I never missed saying Kiddush. Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua said, I never used a synagogue as a shortcut. I had such great respect for the synagogue. I never just walked through it. And I never stepped over other Jews. As I was walking in, people were on the floor. People used to sit on the floor. I never stepped over other person. God forbid. It's Tzelem Elokim. It's an image of God. I never gave the priestly blessing without first saying a bracha. Rav Preda said, in all my life no one ever came to the study hall before me, and I never made a blessing before a Kohen. I honored him and gave him the blessing. And I never ate from an animal whose priestly portions had not been removed, the proper charity given first. Rabbi Nechunya ben Arkana said, in all my life I never accepted personal honor at the expense of my friend's shame. And I never went to bed before giving anyone who had even cursed him. And I was overly generous with my money. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha said, I never looked at the face of an evil person. Spending time with evil people, it has an effect on you. It leaches into you. Rabbi Zera said, I was never demanding in my house. And I never walked in front of someone greater than me. And I never thought about Torah in a dirty alleyway. Again, remember, in the olden days, the streets were running with refuse. I would not think of a Torah thought near something like that. I never walked 4 paces without talis and tefillin on. I never slept in the study hall out of great respect for that place. I never rejoiced at another's mistake. And I never called anyone by their nickname. What's fascinating is you see that these people at the end of their lives, the vast majority of what they attribute their long life to was not their great wisdom, but rather the great respect they accorded to others and to things that deserved respect. So, in conclusion, the Torah's view on the elderly is that they are the people who deserve the greatest respect. They've earned it. They've earned it through their life experiences, even if they are not learned. That's how we rule, even if they're not learned. But just simply by going through life, they've picked up on so much, they've acquired so much life experience. Street smarts, exactly. The Torah says that these are the people who are closer to the light, and therefore we have to spend as much time as we can together with them, to glean from them and grow from them. And that when we do this, and we show all that great respect to other people, God will in turn bless us with a very long life. So we should live to be, as Maimonides calls it, exceedingly elderly, zakein muflag, exceedingly elderly. We should all turn, God willing, 120, 130, 140. Thank you so much. I hope to see you all next week. Thank you.